using Plasma as like a daily driver again, as something a bit more spread out than just like, a couple of days in. I feel like for any sort of proper long-term, if not review, sort of, I guess, experiment, you got to have at least bare minimum a week of daily driving. I did it after like 5 days. This is why my first video on 6.7 wasn't a review, right? It was a breakdown of features. I just didn't have enough time to daily drive the release build. I guess I could have run KDE Linux for a couple of days if I really wanted to, but didn't feel like doing that. Wanted to wait at least until like the full release because there were some minor changes being done. It's unclear exactly how the build will look until it's actually like a build and available in your distros, and especially available in your distros and you're using it in the way that you would use it. It's one thing to go and just install KDE Linux and then try out KDE Linux in the KDE Linux kind of way. I don't use every single component of Plasma. I sometimes use Crunner, but most of the time I launch things using my application launcher. Let's see if I can find it. Yep, first result. Lovely, lovely. I use my application launcher, which is Toffee, which is basically like it. That's the more Roffy kind of version of it. I use it in a D menu formatted way, and I use that as my launcher. That's like my go-to thing. I don't necessarily do everything with Crunner, and there's various other components I have on my main system that they are my system components. They're things that I like to work with. Most I can live without them. It's not really a true representation of how I would use my system unless I have all of the components I go and use. That's just my general thoughts there. But I do think with a theme at the very least, you can give your thoughts on those a little bit sooner. So that video should be out, but I talked about Oxygen many times. If you look up Oxygen, like KDE Oxygen, I'm basically the only person you're going to see in the search results because I'm apparently the only one that actually cares about KDE Oxygen. Maybe you'll see like a Reddit thread, maybe you'll see like a link to the podcast somewhere, but for the most part, it is my coverage of it, and then somewhere in there you'll see the blog post made by Philip Feeler. Maybe you'll see like a post by Nuno Pinheiro, but I liked Oxygen, right? Before I initially used it, I was kinda... how do I say it? I liked the thought of it as this concept. I wasn't necessarily fully sold on actually using it. I was like, this looks cool, this looks neat. I wonder how this is going to actually feel to properly go in daily drive, right? Because it's one thing to see, oh, this is a neat... you go on something like Unix porn, right? I'm gonna find something. You go on this subreddit, and all you'll see are these like beautiful customizations. Wow, it looks so neat. Look at this random. This is just a picture of a window. It's not even like a. Okay, sure. Let me find a better example. Here we go. Here's one that looks like Windows XP, right? And you can look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's a cool curated screenshot. But especially with a theme like this, that's going to break really quickly, right? Like, you're going to run into applications where this style is not being used, and it's going to really stand out against your, like, web content especially, and it's just going to... It's really hard to really know how you're going to vibe with it until you've really actually sat with it and tried it on your own system, tried it with your applications, tried it not just with things that it's intended to be used for. So obviously it's going to work mostly fine with your core KDE components, but what happens if I run a GTK3 application? Right now there is not a GTK3 theme, but KDE is going to tint the application in a way that it looks fine, and obviously the icon theme will get applied to them as well, and honestly, I'm kind of okay using a GTK3 file manager, even though it's not as good as, like, Dolphin would be, right? Dolphin is obviously being themed with Oxygen, but I can still work with it. Why I don't use why I don't use Dolphin basically is because I'm comfortable using what I use, and that's pretty much it. So, I think the most standout thing with Oxygen is the panel. The panel with the radial blur, with the light emanating out of it, this semi-transparent thing. It is a really striking looking panel. But then you also have the headers of the applications and the borders around them, rather than just being a solid color. Color. Oh my god, it's going to be one of those ones, isn't it? I'm just not going to say words today. Rather than being a solid color, it is a radial gradient emanating out of the header for the application, and then it bleeds down the side of the application. So rather than the edges just being a single color, they are a gradient going down from light gray to black, and it looks really, really good. I don't think that this new, well, it's not even new, this new old revival, yeah, we'll go with that. This new old revival of KDE, it really is going to be one of these ones. This new old revival of KDE 4's Oxygen. There we go. We got there eventually. I don't think this is going to be the thing that sets the new direction of Plasma, right? It's just not going to happen. But it was announced as like kind of a semi-official component of Plasma, right? If we look at the release for it, 6.7 release notes, I'm pretty sure it was part of the announcement. Yeah, so here's the page. Plasma 6.7, a productivity powerhouse that's a joy to use. I believe Oxygen was mentioned. Was it on this page? Yes, right here. So it's actually mentioned as a part of that release, right? So it's one of these things where, yeah, it might not necessarily be... Also, this is using the light variant of it rather than just being the dark variant, which is the one that I use. But being this semi-core part of Plasma now, you're likely going to see some of the requirements for Oxygen bleed into this overall design, and hopefully what comes out of... What's the new one? Ocean. Hopefully what comes out of Ocean takes some sort of inspiration from this older way of doing things. I don't think it's going to change everything, right? I don't think we are going back to radial blurs and gradients and everything and tinting everything and all of this neat stuff and skeuomorphic icons. That's another big one. Skeuomorphic icons are such a nice thing to go back to. I didn't realize how much I missed them. Yes, some of the icons in Oxygen do look a little bit... They wouldn't be how you would design them today, right? Some of the back arrows, for example, like the back arrow is actually a great example. Back arrow is very much of its time, but I think a lot of the general things, like the settings icon, the icons for the different settings menus, I think a lot of them do look pretty good. The main issue there is some of these sections where there are icons missing, where it's going back to another icon set, which is fine. I can live with it, but it's definitely something that does need to be worked on and improved. But I think overall, Oxygen is already giving me some of those nice kinds of older computing vibes where things were simpler, applications were more interesting. It wasn't just every single thing is flat design. Not just your applications, not just desktop applications or mobile applications, not just the web, but every single thing is flat design. And I'm kind of less bothered about the web being so flat when I look at the borders for my windows, and they don't look like they're from 1997, right? Like, yes, Oxygen is very clearly a theme designed with an older design language. But it's a language from like 2008, right? This isn't something from 30 plus years. It's getting close there. It's not yet something from 30 plus years ago, closer to 20 years ago. And I don't think people realize how good things actually looked almost 20 years ago, right? People have this idea in their head that video games looked awful back then. Like, that was 2 years into the PS3. Games already looked pretty damn good back then. That was, what, like, Windows... Was it Vista? I think it was Vista. Windows Vista release date. I want to say Vista. Yeah, That was a year into Vista. I don't know what macOS version it was. macOS has looked the same for God knows how long with minor changes. Let me see. Let me guess. Is it like you know what? I'm not even gonna try because I don't know early. I don't know early macOS version. Leopard. Yep. Let's go with that one. macOS Leopard. That's probably a version. That was no. That's way newer. Nope. That is way newer than I thought it was. Okay. Oh wait, no, it's not. That's 2009. I was close. What was the version before that? What was 2008? Predecessor. Where the fuck is predecessor? Oh no, Leopard. Yeah, Leopard was 2007. Snow Leopard was 2009. Okay, I read it wrong. My bad. Close enough. Either way, macOS has had this is back when macOS was also using that kind of skeuomorphic, complex icon design. And I kind of get why people have moved away from it, right? Like, it's hard, it's expensive. You can spin up, like, what? 30 different icons in a day if they're these basic, simple icons. They might not be perfectly done, but you can. Then you have these complex skeuomorphic icons, these realistic-looking icons, and holy shit, you're going to be spending some time on those. Yeah, maybe you're going to get used to them, and you're going to get better at dealing with them, and all this stuff, but they're going to take a bit of time to deal with. It's not something you can just immediately pump out. So I get why it's happened. But it is such a nice and pleasant change. And I don't know. Maybe something's going to come along that really annoys me with Plasma. There is one minor thing. I want to be able to swap the monitor I'm focused on and move my cursor over to that monitor. So there's a keybind for swapping the focus monitor, right? And there is a keybind for moving the cursor to the focus window. And this combination will do like exactly what I want. But there's no thing to do them both at once. And there is a way to run those shortcuts from the command line, but running the jump to the focus window from the command line doesn't seem to work in a multi-window setup. So yeah, it's a little bit of a problem. I haven't found a workaround yet. There might be some sort of workaround. I know the easiest, stupidest, hackiest workaround I can do is use YDO tool, run the shortcut to jump to the window, or run the command line to jump to the window, and then emulate running the shortcut to go to run command line to jump to the monitor, and then run the shortcut to jump to the center of the window or the center of the screen. This would work. It's a stupid hack, and I don't want to have to do it, but it would theoretically probably work. I think. Probably. But it could introduce some like weird key timing stuff where if you ran it and then you pressed another key too quickly, it probably could break something. Yeah. Maybe it's not a perfect solution. I'd like a way to just be able to easily do it with like QD-Bus or with like KDO tool or something else like that, but KDO tool, it's not going to happen. They've explicitly stated it won't happen with that. But QD-Bus to run the shortcut from the command line, it should work. It, like, by all accounts, should be working. It's just a bug and has not been fixed. And I don't know how long it's been a bug for. Probably a while, because I don't think many people are running QD-Bus directly. There's probably not a long list of people that are doing that. So there's probably a long list of undiscovered problems. Either way, though, I think you should give Oxygen a shot. If you don't vibe with it, right, like, it's just like 3 packages. You've got Oxygen, which is the theme, Oxygen icons, and Oxygen cursors. I don't use the cursors. I am not a fan of the cursors.